Hello, everyone. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday with Dr. Pebbles Turbyville, and this is Horses and Humans Research Foundation's webinar on the conference that we had in 2024 in July at Centenary University. So we have a big sponsor of Zoetis that helped us out so we can have such a fun conference and keep our fees down low. So we want to give them a big shout out for helping us with it. Also want to say that in September next month, we have another webinar Wednesday that the Equine Wellbeing Group is presenting. I'm not sure what y'all want to say. Any one of you want to talk about or give an advertisement or shout out about it?
It'll be good. Always is.
Hey.
Second that.
Yes, we've already had people. Yeah, we already have people who are already signed up for it. So that's exciting. So we had a great time in New Jersey, and it's a beautiful place up by Centenary University, I will have to say. And it was also a great facility to host a conference. And I really enjoy the fact that we have such a fun group that loves education, horses, research, and just fellowship, because that's what our theme is: connect, learn, and inspire. And I think I kind of have to boast about it. I think we do that very well, right? Yeah. Everybody shaking their head. So tonight we thought we would do some of the presenters and just kind of talk about what their presentations were about and the takeaways or key points. And unless anybody else has any comments about the conference in general.
I think you covered it.
Okay, good. All right. So Cheryl, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, I was more prepared to talk about what I learned from other people, but I can totally talk about my own presentation. That's fine.
You can do both.
Yeah, so what I decided to talk about was the impact of the words we choose when we describe our equine partners to our clients or participants. And I did some extensive research on this, and I will tell you I found 0 articles on how the words we choose affect the human equine relationships. So if anyone is interested in a research article on this, I think there is a huge gap in our field. However, I found quite a bit of research on how terminology used in substance use counseling and then in mental health counseling affect our biases towards our clients. And then also I found quite a few articles on how the nurses coming off a shift describing the clients that the next nurse was going to take, the words that they chose affected the care that the patients got from the next nurse. And so just thinking about the common things we say, like go grab a horse from the paddock, or this horse was abused, this horse is a ladies' man, she doesn't like people very much, she's really picky, and what that might do to the client horse relationship. And I don't have any research to back this up, but I'm pretty sure that it's similar to what happens in client counselor and nurse patient relationships. And so we did a few activities just thinking about our own internal biases, because we all have a bias on what words we choose and we're not very aware of it. And I shared a story about our mini that we always used to introduce. His name is Sammy. And the first thing we would say is Sammy is really timid with new people because he has an abuse history. And when we stopped telling his story like that to people, he actually started to connect with clients. And that's kind of what got us rolling on this topic. And my friend and I are actually writing a chapter for it in an upcoming book because we've really gone down a long road. So in a minute or less, I would say that is my summary of what I talked about.
That's very nice. Do you have anything else as far as other comments, since you were prepared to talk about other sessions?
Well, I can give a broad comment that I think it's so great that there are these little pockets of people doing the exact same things or very similar things in our industry. And what the conference did, I think, is brought these people together and helped us connect our efforts to promote the same things, like more access to research, more people on the front lines, programs doing the work, like getting access to research, coming up with theories and things like that, thinking of Noreen's presentation to describe what we do. I think we're all, on the same boat of trying to promote EAS, and by collaborating, I think we take those pockets and put them together, and I feel like everyone there was excited to do so.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. I'm going to turn it over to Molly Sweeney, who's chair of the Equine Wellbeing Committee as well as governance, but she's wearing her Equine Wellbeing hat at this time.
Thanks, Bevels. I had so much I wanted to say. I had but I didn't go to my 5-minute limit. And if I'm really good, I might be able to make it within the 5-minute limit. So I'll start my clock. For me, give me a good lead-in, Cheryl. For me, the essence of EAS, Equine Assisted Services, is partnering with horses and incorporating them into one's licensed professional scope of practice to improve the quality of life for people. The HHRF Equine Wellbeing Committee sees horses as sentient beings and believes we should also be improving their quality of life. Our goal is to create optimal health and well-being for our horses. We have been focusing on the research-based 5 domains for evaluating animal welfare with the emphasis on equine. The 5 domains include nutrition, environment, health and fitness, and behavior. And the result of all of these make up the mental health aspects for the horses. My part of the presentation is on behavior. Horse body language and their behavior is just their way of expressing themselves. Positive or negative, wanted or unwanted, are the human perspective. For horses, it's a way for them to communicate with other horses and with people. It is their way of communicating if they are comfortable and relaxed, the parasympathetic mode, or they are uncomfortable and stressed, the sympathetic mode. Uncomfortable can be from pain, fear, anxiety, stress, or frustration, and it be caused by anything that could be lacking within those 5 domains. Both horses and humans use the information from our 5 senses that then travels up to our brain, where we are able to interpret our environment and our reaction to it, resulting in specific behaviors. By understanding the similarities and, more importantly, the difference between horses and humans' brains and between the 5 senses of the horses and the humans, we can better understand behaviors on both sides. I start with comparing brains and go through each of the 5 senses and how differently horses and humans receive, interpret, and process information. The human brain is bigger and has more neurons, and it can react in 0.2 of a second. But as a prey animal, the horse's brain can react even faster to danger due to less neurons that travel faster, as well as much quicker motor response in case of sudden motions or any senses of fear. The horse's 5 senses are much more sensitive than the humans. In a way, you can say they have ESP, extrasensory perception. Humans' primary sense is sight. Horses' primary sense is smell. Humans can hear from a range of 20 to 20,000 hertz. Horses hear from a range of 55 to 33,500 hertz. Humans have 5 to 6 million olfactory receptors for smell. Horses have 300 million receptors, and their olfactory bulb sits right on top of a very large nasal cavity. Taste has not been researched much, if at all, in horses, but we all know they definitely have their preferences, especially that medicine they never want to take. Within the eyes, we have rods and cones. Horses have more rods and can detect motion and see better in low light. Cones detect color. Humans have more cones. When horses see colors similar to what would be considered a human's red-green color blindness. Also, the humans have a round pupil, but horses have an oval pupil, and so they see in a panoramic vision. Touch is very important to horses, and they prefer strokes or scratches to patting. Think of how horses groom each other. It's not with patting, it's with scratches and strokes. Becoming more aware of how a horse processes information and their subsequent behaviors and reactions allows us to understand horses better as we begin to see the world from their perspective. Only then can we enter into a two-way conversation as their partners. And I have 20 seconds left. So for me, behavior, you learn, the more aware you are of behavior, the more you can understand the communication, and then you can do something about it. If they're uncomfortable, then it's our job to find out what the issues are. And they can be unbelievably amount of issues that could be causing their discomfort. And that's my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm impressed that you even kept your own time. Oh. Hold on. All right. Go. Sorry.
Barney getting a talking
Yeah,
to.
yeah. You never know when someone's going to drop by your house, and then your dog starts barking. Okay, so Joe, can you tell us about your session?
Yeah, and I'm gonna, for those of you who don't know, I'm a college professor by night. I do the Equine Assisted Learning Center by day, and I'm gonna switch over, put that hat on, and I'm gonna share my screen. Is that okay, Pebbles? I'm sharing, and can everybody see my picture?
Yep.
Good, let me get it so it's in presenter mode. So one of the things I'm going to just play off Molly's is I did Home from a Horse's Perspective, and I talked about the environment, and evolution shaped the way our horses react, and they see their world through their senses in order to survive, just like Molly talked about. And they have 5 straight traits for survival. They're always alert. They find safety in numbers. They develop a hierarchy. They keep their feet free from any encumbrance. And they never allow a predator to get on their back. I love the last one. But in the wild, there was a study that shows this is what they do in the wild. 60% of the time they spend eating, 20% of the time they spend standing, 10% lying down, and 10% doing other things. And they never live alone by choice because they're prey animals. They move 10 to 40 miles a day. They do 2 or 5 hours of sleep. They have slow wave sleep standing up and REM sleep lying down. And they have water resistant coats. And I love this little cartoon, so I put it up there for you because I always want to put a blanket on my horse when they're cold, and they're fine. And because of all of the things they do in the wild, when we put them all in the stall, we have what we call the diseases of domestication, and they occur in captive animals because the animals never feel that they have a real purpose. Even though we may feel they have a purpose because they're part of our program or whatever, they don't feel like they have a purpose. Because in the wild, I showed you what they do. This is what they're doing. Domestic horses are doing. They're spending 65% time standing, 20% eating, 5% resting, and 10% other. And this is your typical stalled horse or put in a paddock. They create their own stimuli, which we call vices because it's undesirable behavior to us, but actually I'd rather refer to them as stereotypes because they're frequent repetition of the same movement. And in my presentation, I talk about how if you think about a stall, you provided the horse with all the things that they need, just as if we gave you a jail cell, it would provide you with all the things that you need, except actual cognitive stimulation. So we need to find ethical and effective management of our environment, and we need to base it on the needs and natural behaviors of the horses. And it needs to be done from not how we feel. We can't assign human traits to our horses. We have to do it based on scientific information. So the best environment, obviously, for our horses is 24/7 turnout. But of course, we all can't do that. They did find research studies found that there were no differences in behavior between mixed sex and same sex herds, which I thought was interesting. That even talks about injury and everything else. So, but here's a way somebody did it in an urban environment. They had a barn. They could not. They don't have turnout, but look what they did with. They took the stall walls down and put out these grates so the horses can feel like they're in a herd. They need free choice forage. Evening and movement go together. If you ever watch your horse eating, it eats in front of the foot, and then it takes another step and then eats in front of that foot. And this keeps the circulation and digestive tract moving. We need to give them free choice forage. We need to find a way to do that so that even if they're stalled all the time, I really like the one up in your right-hand corner where they actually took a stall in the middle and filled it full of hay, and then the horses had free access to it. And this is something from Europe that they're doing. If you notice these stalls, if you look at the stall, it's very long opening, and the horses are able to put their heads out and eat as if they were in a herd. The people who have this situation say that it's much less work for the employees. They just put the hay down the middle. It's not getting mixed up in the vetting. And they say the horses seem much happier. We need to enrich their environment. Give them some kind of cognitive stimulation, whether it's out in the field or in their stalls. And we need to allow them to express natural behaviors. Again, there were a lot of studies that I showed in my presentation. The picture on the right is a stallion barn. And this is a way, again, using those long, narrow partitions, they actually have the stallions living together and socializing with each other. And they're not finding any injuries or accidents coming out of this. They're actually finding the horses are just happier. We need to keep them resting and sleeping areas. Again, you can be creative with all of this. And overall, you'll have happier horses. They are in better health. It reduces stress. There's less stereotypes. They get sufficient sleep. They have better behavior when working. And I think one of the things that we really need to be promoting is it's actually less cost to programs because there's less burnout, there's less barn hours, there's better fitness, etc. So anyway, this is what I was sharing from our equine well-being committee from the environment standpoint. Does anybody have any questions?
That was great.
I love all the pictures.
I know.
Thank you.
And it still blows my mind that they put those stallions together and they don't fight. Like
I know.
Mhm.
and the same thing with the mares and geldings, because I had like one mare and all these geldings, and they were okay together, but you could tell that there was like two guys that would fight over her, and then there was one who really loved her. Like
Oh.
Aw.
it was like he was a pony.
Well, I must
It
say
was
I
really
have
funny.
I'm doing research out here on my herd, and I have 60 acres and 40 rescue horses together, mares and geldings, and I never have a lick of trouble with the difference between the sexes. So anyway,
That's great. Great to know. All right,
That's
Marcy.
Do you
I'm gonna
care which
turn it
one I
over to you.
start with?
No, it's all up to you.
Okay.
Whatever you like to
right.
say.
Okay. So I'm going to start talking about setting weight carrying and workload limits for horses in EAS programs. I see this as a step in shifting the EAS paradigm from using the horse, which is my horror, to working with the horse. We all wish that we had a one-size-fits-all formula. It's just not possible. The 20% formula that you're probably familiar with came from the 1929 US Cavalry Manual, where the riders were young and fit and capable riders, and the horses were fit and well-trained. And really all they cared about was getting through the war alive. They didn't care about the well-being and the longevity of the horses. So remember that there's a huge difference between what a horse can carry and what he should carry, right? And there are so many complex interwoven factors. So for example, a horse might be fine carrying a heavy rider for a half an hour, working in large figures on good footing in moderate temperatures at the walk. But that same horse could suffer significant damage with the same rider, working in deeper footing on smaller figures in very hot or very cold temperatures, and where they're including intervals of trot and or canter work. So research shows that the effect of rider's weight can actually triple during certain phases of the sitting trot as compared to rider's weight at the walk. And then you have to factor in the horse's weight as well. So when a horse is feeling safe and comfortable and is free to express his natural curiosity and desire for interaction, the benefit to all is enormous. The alternative to that is a shut-down horse that stoically endures pain, discomfort, stress, and fear. So I love to say, if it's not good for both the horses and the people, then it's not good for either one. There are huge benefits to having considerate weight carrying and workload limits, including sustainability for horses and programs and huge long-term cost savings. This is a great opportunity to model and teach empathy, patience, compassion, two-way communication, relationship building, trust building, leadership, respect, and so many other fine skills that we'd love to, share with our participants. So some of these factors that we need to consider are really obvious, like the rider, like the horse, like the tack, working conditions, the frequency, nature, and duration of sessions. Some of you may or may not know, but the top line evaluation scoring, it looks at the horse's muscle development, which is far, far more important than looking at their body condition score, which only is an indication of their fat cover. So a horse can be a perfect 5 on the body condition score and yet have very poor top line muscling, which will have a huge negative impact on his well-being. I'm just going to throw this in, even though I took it out, but I have to say it. Adequate muscling is the result of feeding necessary amounts and balance of bioavailable amino acids, which build muscle, and proper exercise, which develops that muscle. Calories only build fat, they never build muscle. So in many instances, there's an inverse correlation between the horse's own weight and how much he should carry. Fatter horses are often unhealthy horses. So although it may seem counterintuitive at first, research shows that as height goes up in horses, soundness, weight carrying ability, and degree of coordination and agility all tend to go down. Draft horses are not particularly adapted to bearing weight, and huge size does not confer weight carrying ability. Potential soundness goes way down as height exceeds 16 hands and weight exceeds 1450 pounds. So some critical factors to consider for weight carrying ability are the density of bone, especially as measured and viewed in the circumference of the cannon bones, having short coupling with a strong back, and the breadth over the top of the horse's loins. Research shows that while carrying a single heavy rider on a one-day ride is not likely to seriously harm a horse, over the years, a consistent regimen of this sort of work could add up to chronic injury. Just because a horse isn't staggering under a heavy load doesn't mean that he's not accruing silent cumulative injuries that will manifest years later as early arthritis or a sudden unexpected breakdown. Studies also show that horses have an easier time carrying a heavier, well-balanced rider than a lighter rider who is unbalanced or who shifts and moves around in the saddle. I think I got that in 5 minutes. Thank you. You're muted, Pebbles.
I know. I was like, I'm so impressed. I'm so excited, Marcy. That was so good that you could tame
Wait
it
till I
down.
get to nutrition. That's going to be even tougher, but I'm going to try.
Hey, I'm impressed. All right, Kathy,
I
it's
have
your
a
turn.
quick question. So I did 2 presentations. Am I just combining them or?
No, I gave you 2 slots.
Oh, wow. Okay, perfect. Okay. So the first one I did was on health and fitness. And one of my goals was to combine the information from the other presentations a little bit so that, because we all sit in on all of our talks, and to address the basics of and the needs. And so when we talk about top line scoring and looking at the muscling and learning how to address fitness and health, we had, get my brain in gear. We had great interaction from the group. And again, that fellowship part comes through. And one of the women, when I asked for questions about the presentation, she said, I wish that going forward, we could talk about Lyme disease, because we hadn't incorporated that into our talk. And so learning how to do what we do better is always at the top of the list, and really listening to the horse in the present moment, and choosing a method. What is your method of conditioning? And for therapeutic work, I think it's actually harder. When I managed a barn full of fox hunting horses, I knew that in 8 weeks I could get a basic horse fit for fox hunting, at least for cubbing at the beginning of the season. And so I had a method and a plan of how to do that. I think it's much harder in a therapeutic setting where you really don't always know exactly what's going to be demanded of the horse, depending on the students. So the type of fitness and the method of the fitness. And I think one of the benefits of the conference is that we get to discuss it as a group, and the combined knowledge in the room is off the Richter scale, and the ability of the people to share their knowledge, so that I'm not the only one giving facts, because I don't think that was the most important part. It's presenting for optimal care. How can we together improve what we're doing from this point forward? So that, and I know, Marcy, this is one of your favorite sayings, so that when we know better, we can do better. And having that as our motto, for having horses that are healthier, and having it cost less, even looking at different ways that other people are managing the health of their horses, whether they need to be in shoes or they don't need to be in shoes, whether they can sleep outside or not sleep outside. And one of the conversations that came up is, if you have a horse that's never been turned out with other horses and never slept outside, and always led by a groom with a professional groom with a chain over his nose, how do you adjust him? How do you do the rehab to bring him into a therapeutic setting, where the vet might say, this horse is clear to be donated, and he's healthy enough, he's sound enough, but no one has taken into consideration the fact that he's going to be turned out with a bunch of horses and handled by young, inexperienced people. And all of a sudden you have a problem, a behavior problem. And also, the horse suffered physically, and he cribbed, and he had foundered, and he had all these underlying issues that had to be addressed. It's helping people to create a program for those horses so that they can be restored to optimal health. And that's what we all work on together, and getting the interaction going. I didn't set an alarm, so
That's good. Yeah,
okay.
thank you. You did well. 5 minutes. Okay. I'm gonna go back now to Joe and Miller, who presented 3 times. So
Yes,
that's why
you're
you're
gonna,
seeing her.
yeah, you're gonna see me a bunch. And hey, guess what? We're gonna share screen again, because I presented 3 times. I want to make sure I tell you about my thing. So everybody see my screen again.
Yes.
Okay, let me get it to a presenter. All right, so the other one I did was eating disorders and rescue horses. And the reason I did this one, to be honest with you, is because we had a young lady at the farm, which I'm going to show you. And everybody always asked me about this. So I was asked to present on this. So Because we're doing rescue horses, I put how they heal together, because again, the horses that come into the program a lot of time are only a 1 or 2 on the body condition scale. So we do it through equine assisted learning, which everybody knows what that is. And our team is a little bit unique. We have 2 educators. We have a CTRI, and I have a equine specialist, but her degree is in psychology. She has an advanced psychology degree. She's not a psychologist, but she has all the training, which really helps out. And then we have a lot of youth at our farm from local colleges. They're interns. So there's a lot of similarities between at-risk youth and rescue horses. For instance, I thought it was interesting that this young lady had a plate in her leg, so she walked with a limp. And of course, what does? She picks the horse with a limp. This young lady had been abused, and she picked the abused horse. And then we have this young lady who was anorexic, who picked the anorexic horse. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet Katie, who's anorexia nervosa. And she had extreme willpower to avoid eating. And of course, these eating habits became habitual. She had malnutrition and excessive weight loss. And the cause of her troubles was she had a change in life. She was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. And basically she said, if I can't eat what I want to eat, I'm just not going to eat. Yeah. So she had some mental health diagnoses as well. She was obsessive compulsive disorder. She was very rigid in everything she did. And she had a lot of anxiety, and you can see how thin she is right there. People with eating disorders find it difficult to be emotionally close to others. She had a very close relationship to her mom, but of course her mom's trying to get her to eat all the time. So of course that puts strain on the relationships as well. Mm-hmm. She was therapy resistant. She had tried art therapy, group counseling, all those different kinds of things, and just was getting thinner and thinner. With EAL, when she came into the program, we wanted to build new relationship patterns. We wanted to work past the toxic feelings that had arisen in relationship because of food, and we wanted her to form a bond with a horse. Our methodology is the theory of resilience by Ann Maston, and that's the ability to have good outcomes in spite of serious threats to adaptation or development. So we pair the horse with the right person. And I think this is Marcy's favorite picture. So we had this horse on the left come in. Her name was Sid, and you can see what kind of condition Sid is. And this is Katie on the right. And Katie is 12 years old and weighs between 40 and 45 pounds. So she's really this is the end of her, trying to get better, basically, is what her mom said. So she loved animals, so we thought, let's try this. So we brought Sid in, and of course she didn't like the way Sid looked and really wanted to help Sid. And I said, okay, Katie, so we're going to pair you with Sid, and Sid's going to be the horse that you work with. So we had to set some small achievable goals. She needed energy to work with the horses, so we decided to do a food contract. She would devise a food plan, a meal plan for Sid, which she did with the veterinarian. And then we had a dietitian come in and made a diet for her, because obviously she had to have calories and able to work with Sid. Now, the deal was if she didn't eat her meal, then Sid wouldn't get her meal. Well, of course, Sid always got her meal. You all know that. But in the morning, she'd come in and the bucket of food would be there. And we'd have a long chat about how, Sid doesn't eat if you don't eat. So anyway, we also had to identify her trigger, which was basically choice. I mean, she basically said, if I can't pick what I want to eat, then we're not going to eat. So what we did is we reinforced positive changes without focusing on her medical condition. And what we did is we gave her a list of approved diabetic foods and let her choose off of that list. So giving her the choice is what began her healing. Her physical recovery was to restore weight to an appropriate level, to normalize electrolyte and hormone levels, and have enough energy to ride, because that's what she wanted to do. We started working with the horses first, then we worked with a friend, and then with food until they became habitual and comfortable. A lot of times, Katie ate her meals on horseback. Again, when you look at pairing the right horse with the right person, this is them today. She weighs about 80 pounds, and obviously Sid looks fantastic. So, and I ended it by saying that the truth is it's much easier to walk the road of recovery with someone walking alongside you than making the trip on your own. And I had a bunch of other case studies. This was just one. But anyway, I just thought that would be the best way to share it. So that's what I talked about.
Fabulous.
It's a great great story. And is she the one that went to pony finals? Or
No,
that was a different group.
yeah, another one in my anorexia program. She was at the conference actually.
And she won pony finals.
Yes, she did.
I
Number
mean,
one in the
4-H.
nation.
Number one in the
like that,
nation over
on a
fences.
rescue horse.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Okay. Marcy.
Oh boy. All right.
Okay,
Here we
here you go.
Okay.
Now, I mean, you have a little bit of extra time if you want.
Oh, I do. Okay, thank you. So this is a giant topic. This is equine nutrition and practical applications. It's such an enormous topic. There's so many variables. I am so not an expert, but I have the privilege of having a dear friend and mentor who is Don Capper, who's one of the world's most renowned equine nutritionists. So all my information came from Don. So horses are non-ruminant herbivores or hindgut fermenters, and their digestive system is meant to receive small amounts of forage on a very frequent basis. Fermentation in the hindgut is where the forage is broken down by microbes, which is my latest favorite thing, and it provides the bulk of the horse's energy. And that's the key reason that horses' diets must be primarily forage and not grain or concentrates. So really important to provide frequent access to high quality forage as close to 18 hours a day as possible. Most horses in moderate work should be provided about 2% of their body weight in high quality forage based diet daily. So that equates to about 24 pounds of total dietary intake for an average 1,200-pound horse. Ideally, they should have this, as Joe mentioned, while being able to move freely and to lower their heads while grazing and eating forage. There are a huge number of benefits to eating with their heads lowered, including improved production of saliva and fewer respiratory problems, better digestion, better tooth wearing, many other things. So in grasses, the sugar tends to be the highest in the bottom 3 inches. And that's sort of counterintuitive. If you think like a blade of grass, then you want to survive. So grass that is eaten down, that is frostbit, that is drought stricken, that looks brown and miserable, actually has far higher sugars than beautiful, tall, green, lush grass. So just, think like a blade of grass and you'll kind of understand how that works. So the point at which the hay is cut plays a huge role in its nutritional content and in the bioavailability of nutrients. The more mature the hay, the coarser the stems and the fewer nutrients are available to the horses. It's harder for the horse's body to access the protein in more mature hay, and it's harder still for older horses. Grasses, and including pasture and hay, rarely provide the quantity and the recommended ratios of minerals or balanced bioavailable amino acids that are needed for optimum health and performance. And that can be seen again in looking at the horse's muscling. Horse hay is usually grown for volume and not for quality or for nutritional content. So you can have your forage tested, and that's a place called Equi Analytical. It's EQUI-analytical.com. This isn't an ad for them, but it's super important to know what nutrients are in your forages and what is missing so that you can feed the difference to meet your horse's nutritional requirements. So have free choice, high quality, balanced minerals, whether block or loose, available to your horse at all times. Again, just like protein, the form matters. So chelated minerals are more easily absorbed and utilized by the horse's body. So whether you feed concentrates or a ration balancer, you must feed the recommended amount on the bag. If you feed concentrates, you need to be aware of your horse's calorie needs and not over or underfeed. If you feed less than the recommended amount, you may deprive your horse of necessary nutrients. So if your horse is getting a little chunky and you decide you're going to cut down and feed him only 2/3 of the recommended ration on the bag, he's then only getting 2/3 of his necessary nutrients. There is no research that shows that excess protein causes excitability. Protein is not related to energy at all. Here's a big one. Feed labels do not indicate the quality or the bioavailability of the ingredients in the bag. Crude protein on a feed label is only a measurement of nitrogen. Blows my mind, but that's true. It doesn't indicate the type, the source, the quality, the bioavailability of the ingredients in the bag. So a diet lacking in the proper balance of amino acids can result in the horse breaking down their own muscle tissue to meet their daily body function requirements. Only proper quantity and balance of bioavailable amino acids will build the muscle. So when you look again at the body condition score, that's only fat cover, and it comes from calories, whereas the top line evaluation score would be an indication of the muscling. And that will only come from balanced bioavailable amino acids. Fermentation in the hindgut is where the bulk of the horse's energy is produced, and it's produced by microbes. This microbial population is determined by what the horse is eating, and it has a huge impact on the horse's overall health, mood, behavior, energy level, immune responses, and more. So the equine colon and cecum can hold 1 quadrillion microbes. So the horse is actually genetically more bacteria than he is equine. A healthy gut forms, I know that you're just riding a big horse-shaped blob of microbes. So a healthy gut forms a complex immune system that's responsible for, here's a huge one, 70% of a horse's overall immune responses comes from those microbes in his hind gut. Research shows that changes in behavior and most challenging behaviors appear to be linked with changes in the microbiota. Equine survival is dependent on these microbes to break down forage into absorbable nutrients, and the horse would die without them. So how do you know that your feeding program is working for your horses? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So if your horses look healthy, they act healthy, they're sound, they're willing to participate in their work, they get a clean bill of health from your veterinarian, then you're doing a great job. Just keep it up. Thank you.
Wow, Marcy, that was super.
Zip, zip, zip. Yeah, and there's so much more, but
I know.
5 minutes. That's it.
I'm really impressed. Marcy
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was hard.
loves her topic and she could talk for.
It was hard to go from an
Yeah.
hour to 40 minutes, and then I get 5. But yeah.
Of always challenging you. All right. Back to Joe.
Oh gosh. Okay. One more share screen. Because like I said, I had 3. So I'm really putting on the college professor hat here because we actually did a research project, and it's called Equine Assisted Learning Combined with Academics Reduces the High School Dropout Rate. So what we did is we had at our farm with rescue horses, we needed a bunch of help. So we brought in a bunch of at-risk youth, and being an educator, I wanted them to graduate from high school because they weren't. So the problem was that at-risk teens tend to drop out of high school, and this population is difficult to work with. And we can all agree with that. I did look at our region to see what the high school dropout rate was, and the state average was 3.1%. As you can see, our area was all over that, with our city being at 7%. So the National Education Association says small groups are what make this group successful. So we formed the United Way program. We call it United Way because it sounds like United Way, and I wanted to raise money. So anyway, the United Way program, and I'm still taking data, but we started in 2008. We're up to 2022. In our program, we have 86 participants, ages 15 to 21, grades 9 through 12. We've had a lot more participants come through. We actually have a school on property, but I had to make sure that I met my control group. So I had students with disabilities or students from low-income families. They couldn't cross over. So that's what made up my 86. The group met 2 days a week for 3 hours. The session ran 50 weeks a year. Rainy days, they did life skill group activities, and they used to stay in the program at least 2 years because research shows that it takes 2 years to change a behavior. So here's what we did. We took our at-risk youth. We did unmounted activities, mounted activities. We actually did academics with educators, and we had a 100% success rate of our kids. So we based it on individual goals. We took the IEP and made it into an individual horse program. So we were developing riding skills, socialization, and the educators were working on schoolwork, coping skills, and behavioral skills. The horses were our motivators, and we paired each participant with one specific horse for the duration of the program. This seemed to increase the students' motivation to enter and stay in the program. They learned all about their nonverbal body language and how it's perceived. In our equine well-being group, we've been really talking about mirroring. Is mirroring the right word? For instance, an angry horse doesn't mirror anger back to that child. It may walk away or whatever. But so anyway, we came a group of us sitting around one evening came up with this instead. Horses react, they respond, and they reflect. So we are basing our program on something called solution-focused learning, which is based on solution-focused therapy, where we're envisioning the future, which is graduation, and teaching the life skills and giving them the academics to achieve that outcome. So we used, again, the theory of resilience to develop the emotional and social skills. And we used Anders Ericsson's repetitive performance of intended cognitive or psychomotor skills. So it's basically deliberate practice where they're practicing over and over and again. We actually do math on horseback. We do English on horseback. We take all the things that are in the classroom and do it out in the arena. This is an example of a math lesson. I picked something that I thought everybody would remember because everybody doesn't like math the way I do. So absolute value meeting from the negative cone to my standards, which is my absolute value sign, is the same as the standards to the positive cone. So we said Jane will be able to count the correct number of strides from the negative cone to the crossrail and then the crossrail to the positive cone 2 times. So she's actually we're meeting all of the different learning styles. It's visual, it's auditory, and it's kinesthetic. The outcomes of the Brook Hill program, we had 100% of the 86 alumni not only graduated from high school, but they did so on time within 4 years. And I think what I was most impressed with was our post-high school graduation. You have to remember that all of these kids were failing school when they came to us. And we had 7 come out with a PhD from our program. So, and you can kind of see what they've done. And basically at the end of every research project, those of you who are involved with research know you have a lot of extra questions. And what we said at the end is it might seem sufficient that the program works. However, from a scientific perspective, and the more interesting question is why it works. Was it the fact, I mean, we all know that experiential learning programs work, like Outward Bound and those kind of things. Is it just the fact that the kids are out on the farm rather than the inner city? Was it the horses? Was it the fact that we had a tutoring program in the classroom? Our results were based on the state cohorts. So what we did is just took the state cohorts of who graduated with different disabilities or were low income compared to ourselves. And again, that doesn't take into account also were the other kids getting tutored. We did try to compare to like a tutoring program. Sylvan Learning Center is close to us, but they didn't want to share their results. So, this is just so much more that could be done with this. This is the initial study. It is being published right now. So once it's done, we're hoping somebody will take it and run with it. Thank you, Pebbles.
No, thank you. I kind of wish I could go back to school
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
and hang out at your barn. All right, we have 2 more. Kathy and Noreen are going to speak. So Kathy, you're on now.
So the second talk that I discussed was on behavior, and again it draws in all the aspects of what we just talked about, and even going back to what Cheryl said about language, there's the language we use, but if we compare it to the language that we choose and dealing with the horse in present moment, whatever that horse is in front of us, and we creating awareness because we're not always aware that we do that. So bigger picture thinking, one of the things I did this year before coming to the conference is spend 3 days at a conference or a seminar for sports psychology dealing with fear and post-traumatic stress and really looking at the importance of our own language, our own feelings when we show up, and I've always helped people to see the horse's behavior. So one of the things I like doing the most is going in and helping read and assess a horse's body language in that present moment without knowing anything about the horse, and figuring out what that horse needs to have optimal health, whether it's fitness or what are the stressors that horse is feeling, and understanding that we have to do that as much for the person as for the horse. And how do we do that? And we do it for ourselves as the third element in our program. And looking at alternatives if what we're doing isn't 100% effective, if we haven't done everything that we can do to communicate what needs to be communicated, looking for an alternative, and even comparing what are the rewards that are given, what are the corrections, how are they giving, who gives them, who chooses how to give them, and then assessing, do we give more corrections than rewards? And I would say in almost every program that I've visited, I see more corrections being given than rewards, and even more corrections to the people than rewards. And how do we switch that up, even in our words and our dialogue, to be more encouraging and less using corrections? When we talk about alternatives, if we're going back to a healthy horse or optimal health, there's body work that could be done that can help teach a horse self-carriage just standing still. So think about thinking outside the box, and then helping to change the story and helping each other to change the story. One of the talks that was given was on sleep deprivation. And Molly, help me with the last name of the vet.
Tomlinson.
What?
Tomlinson.
Tomlinson.
Yeah, right, Tomlinson.
Mike, and who is the vet for working with Olympic level horses. And that might be an idea to work with. What are the signs of a sleep deprived horse, and how do we tell? And that might be a way that by studying that a little bit more, we might end up with healthier horses, and just really understanding ways to see stress in our horses, and then looking for the signs or the behavior of a horse who is in partnership or losing focus. Joe just talked about focused learning. What are the signs of a horse that is losing focus? Is he rubbing his head on his leg? Is he looking out the window? Did he have a spook? And knowing that there's at least 3 signs that your horse is going to give you before he blows up, whether it's a bite, a kick, a spook. There's going to be a look in his eye, his ear, his mouth, his tail, his back. There's going to be a change in the behavior before something else happens. So there's so many different ideas and ways to work that deepens our partnership and creates a healthier animal. And our ability to look at the physical and mental, emotional, and even spiritual, to bring all of those pieces together instead of a method that only focuses on the physical. And that's the reason I think that we were all at the conference and then shared all these ideas.
Awesome, Kathy. All right, Noreen, I'm letting you be saving the best for last. Not really.
No, they were
All
all
good.
pretty,
You're
all
all good.
pretty awesome.
Mm.
So I hadn't planned to present. I thought I was going to listen to everybody else's, and I'm so glad I did, because I missed all those sections on the horse, and I think that it was so important. I'm glad to have had the opportunity. I'm going to share my screen. I just pulled together, let's see. think this is the right one. No. Okay.
There
Can
you
you
go.
see that? Yeah,
Yes.
with too many things. You can see the slides.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I like the rainbow.
Okay. Yes. So I presented this theory that Angela Fournier and I came up with that really is a systems theory. It's kind of a big picture theory. It's not something that tells anybody what to do. It is, we call it East Equine Assisted Story Transformation. That was an easy little acronym that we came up with a few years ago, and we've kind of stayed with it. It's an explanatory theory of what happens when you put horses and humans together. And our framework was psychotherapy and also equine assisted learning, because we both sort of came out of the EGALA world, and that kind of an intervention. We're both mental health professionals. But I think sometimes when I talk about it, it has so many moving parts. Somebody suggested to me that I emphasize that when each person is doing their research or doing their clinical practice, and I could see it in each presentation that I just listened to, we all have a specific focus that we're looking at. And if you can imagine, you go out in the dark, I'm going out to check my mail and there's no lights outside, and I take a flashlight and I'm watching along the ground. I'm only looking and lighting up the thing that I'm looking at, but there's so much more that's happening all around me in the dark. And so this theory's idea was to have more of a broad picture and capture all of the possible things that might be going on, not necessarily that they are all going on at the same time. So I could see how this could be used as a framework to be able to explain a lot of what everybody talked about. And the theory is really an idea that these interactions are mind-body experiences for the human and a mind-body experience for the horse in a particular environment. And the environment includes the weather, the location, the facilitators, who's there. So all of those things come into play. And my focus really was on what was happening eventually for the human, but I think that it could be developed as people learn more about what's going on in the mind of a horse, if you could figure that out. So the human domains are a physiological domain, what's happening in the body, a sensory domain, the information that we take in our experience, how we're thinking about it, a conceptual, symbolic domain, what we bring to a particular interaction, and then how we make sense of it, or the story that we make about it. That's really quick. And I had a lot of trouble. I spent a lot of years thinking about what is actually happening in these sessions. Actually, Pebbles, you better yell at me when I get to 4 minutes. Trying to figure out what was happening in these sessions. And I'm a nurse, so I kept thinking about what the body part that's involved here. And I learned about polyvagal theory and was able to bring that in. And that is really kind of a bottom up. What is happening in our bodies informs what happens in our minds. What happens in the horse's body, polyvagal influences the horse as well, the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. It also influences the horse. And when you put those things together, you get this kind of complex interaction. I'm going to jump ahead. So I know it took me 40 minutes to talk about this, and I never stopped talking during the session. There are all these different pieces, and this starts with this polyvagal idea that we are already set up when we have an encounter with a horse. We're either feeling a little anxious and sympathetic, or we're feeling like this is the most amazing thing in the world, and we have more of a willingness to connect. And then we have the perception or sensory information that comes in, and the environment. And the horse also is in a particular state. And so if you put a human together and they're in a particular state, like they're feeling, I'm going to connect with the horse, and the horse is in a sympathetic state and is like, no, I'm not connecting with you, and the horse walks away, the human ends up going back into sympathetic, and they get anxious and upset, and they'll make up a story about what's happening. This is kind of like a super simplified version. So this thing here are all the different theories. See, I had here, you can see here, that I came up with. I'm going to sort of stop sharing, maybe.
It's like the Wheel of Fortune.
Stop sharing, yeah. Right, because it's very dynamic in this theory. Things change. The environment changes, the facilitator changes. Here I have horse behavior. The horse can be moving towards the person. The horse can be intrusive. The human can be intrusive. The person may be having had past trauma, and that influences what's going on for them. This is like a 5-minute simplified. I'm just going to kind of bring it back and say it's a big picture, trying to explain all of the things that are happening. And I could see how it works with horse behavior, horse nutrition, how horse well-being, which is what Catherine was talking about. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to add that to the wheel. The well-being of the horse, which is such a nice way of being able to describe what was happening anyway. That's our theory, and we're just trying to figure out how to use it. So that's where we are.
I wish I had gotten to your session, Noreen.
Me too. That was
I know,
wonderful.
that was fabulous.
I think we actually have it recorded. So
Oh, good.
I just
Good.
haven't put anything up yet. But no, that was really great, because it also was a good conclusion, because it did draw on all the different topics that we are covered tonight. So thank you for jumping in and wrapping us up for tonight.
Thanks.
So that concludes our webinar Wednesday, and I'm going to pause this. If anybody has any questions, just hold them for a second. And thanks for everyone coming.